Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to this week's episode of Your Financial Pharmacist Podcast, episode 98. We're 2 episodes away from episode 100. We got some exciting things planned, which is going to be a lot of fun. But here we are live in Columbus, Ohio at the Albrecht household. And we're going to talk about avoiding lifestyle creep, what we think is the number one barrier to new pharmacy graduates achieving long-term financial wealth. So what's it like? Here we are, Columbus, Ohio, live in person. It's been a great
checking
weekend.
out the new digs since you moved to Ohio State. So last time we were in Rootstown, Ohio.
Wait, correction. It's the Ohio State.
Oh, sorry.
Oh boy.
Sorry.
Oh boy.
I am a Buckeye fan, so I should know better. But yeah, I mean, lots going on. I feel like every time we get together, and we get together, quarterly?
Yeah.
There's just so much to talk about, so much to do. Just a lot of juice and buzz around, I think, kind of where the brand is headed. And I always get so jacked up about meeting with you guys. So
I think it's going to be a fun episode. And we've got a great one coming for you next week as well. We're going to talk about financial moves that we think every new pharmacy graduate should be making. Great time of year, obviously, graduation right around the corner. But here we're going to talk about this idea of avoiding lifestyle creep. But also we have to mention this is the first time we're doing some video on the podcast as well. So if you haven't yet done so, make sure to check out our brand new YouTube channel. We don't have a lot. I don't even know if we have a subscriber yet, but we're going to build that up over time.
Yeah, we got to work on that.
So you'll be seeing more video from us. That's a Tim Church goal in 2019. And so here we are in person, live in video. Kind of feel like an old man a little bit, not going to lie. I think it's Joe Rogan and Elon Musk are smoking weed on their podcast, and we're drinking coffee like old men.
From a Dr. Seuss mug.
Yeah.
Yes, from a Dr. Seuss mug, yes.
Mine has brown in it, brown coffee, not brown liquor.
All right, so Tim Church, let's start about just this concept of barriers to a net worth mindset. And as we think about avoiding lifestyle creep, and I think in the book, 7-Figure Pharmacist, he had a really neat story that really highlighted and I think sets a tone for this topic. And that was about a pharmacist named Sarina. So tell us a little bit more about Sarina and some of the background and into the concept of lifestyle creep.
Sure. So when we talked in the book about Sarina, she was a pharmacist in her 30s. And she was doing extremely well in her career. She was residency trained, had an amazing job, and she even had a side job working at another pharmacy. So she was making a lot of money. She's making about $140,000 a year, and that was even a couple years ago, which is way beyond what the median pharmacist salary was. So if you look at kind of her lifestyle and what she had going on, she drove a really nice car. I think she had a Mercedes-Benz. She had a nice house, and she always dressed well, went on the best vacations, went out to nice restaurants. So on the outside, it really looked like she had everything together with her financial picture. But the reality is that one day she knew I was working with some personal finance and working with YFP, and she asked to talk to me about her personal situation. And basically what she expressed to me was that she was going to go into foreclosure with her home. And I just let that sink in for a minute, and I just thought, wow. She's making $140,000 a year. She's a pharmacist, so obviously she's very intelligent, knows a lot about pharmacy, but she didn't really know that much about personal finance. And she was in a situation when her second job hours were cut. She was no longer to make all of the payments that she had. She not only had a mortgage, but she had student loans, she had credit cards, she had her car payment. So she had all these payments going on. And then basically once that job was on, she wasn't able to make those.
So Tim Baker, when I hear that story of Sarina, I think of what the Millionaire Next Door and the Next Millionaire Next Door, in their most recent book, really outlines this concept of being income affluent versus balance sheet affluent. And when I hear Sarina's story, which is true, I think for many pharmacists, no judgment, something that I struggled with as well, but making a good income, but is that income actually converting into long-term financial success? So tell us a little bit about that concept of income affluence relative to balance sheet affluence.
Yeah. So, I mean, I guess the first thing when I hear a story like that is that I look at Sarina's case, and even though she's in a tough situation, I respect the fact that for a very intimate subject like finance, that you're willing to lay the cards on the table and be vulnerable, and in a position like a pharmacist or someone who's very highly educated, sometimes it's really hard to say, I don't really know what I'm doing, or maybe the people or the ideas that I've surrounded myself with aren't necessarily the right way to go about it. So one of the things that that I really try to impress upon clients is really shifting that mindset from income statement affluent to balance sheet affluent. So essentially, in the case of Sarina, the income statement affluent, that would describe her, someone who the top line revenue is coming in 140K. We understand that that's well above the average household in the United States. But nothing's sticking. It's a sieve. The financial plan is the money that comes in goes right out. So I think part of the problem that we see, some of the issues that we see, is that pharmacists buy into that. It's like, hey, my worries are going to be all gone when I start making that income, and I have nothing to worry about. And I think one of the things that we are trying to key in on is not so fast. If I use my Lee Corso impression, not so fast with that. So I think it's shifting the mindset to balance sheet affluent, where money comes in. Income is the lifeblood of the financial plan, but what actually sticks is growing those assets and minimizing those liabilities and growing that net worth over time. So the balance sheet grows over time instead of money coming right in and right out. So I think having that mindset, and I've seen clients that make 140, 240 and be very much income statement affluent, where it goes in and goes right out. And I've seen clients that make 40 or 50,000 and be wealthier relative to that comparison, because they just get the fact that, hey, I'm going to pay myself first. I'm not going to take on consumer debt, which is very predatory. Mm-hmm. I'm going to be intentional about my student debt. So, I think it's a mindset that, we'll probably talk about FOMO and YOLO a little bit later. But it's so hard to, look like, not compare yourself to others and think that that's like normal. And, the millionaire next door, he, when he studies millionaires, the millionaires aren't the people that you think are millionaires. Right. A lot of that consumerism, it's really facade. It's a house of cards, Tim Church. So, it's important to be aware of that.
Yeah, this hits home for me, as I think back to the journey Jess and I took. Is 2012 was really the pivot year for us. Graduated in 2008, did residency 2009. 2012, as I look back on that journey, had earned about $500,000 of income, but had a net worth of negative 225. I mean, it's just a classic example of incomes coming in the door, but it's not being converted.
Right.
And we talk about this all the time on the podcast when we're doing presentations. A pharmacist's income is an incredible tool, but that tool has to be put to work towards paying down your debts, growing your long-term savings, building an income protection plan, and certainly lifestyle creep. And what we're talking about here today, I think, plays so much into that.
Yeah, and I think like what you're talking about is it's going to be normal coming out of pharmacy school for most people to have a negative net worth. Yes. I mean, that's unfortunately the reality for most people when they start out. But I think what's more important is looking at that and looking at the change over time. How much year to year is that net worth growing, trying to get to that balance sheet affluence.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I like, when we talk about the financial planning, what you do, Tim Baker, is net worth is top of mind all the time, right? So yeah. I know when Jess and I log on to the platform that you use, front and center, net worth, what's growing over time. And I think that's a great indicator of your overall financial health. Yeah,
when we were touring around Columbus today, I kind of went on a mini rant. So there's, Tim Albrecht in the driver's seat, Tim Church in the passenger seat, and Tim Baker in the back, like a little kid ranting. And I'm like, why don't more financial planners, look at net worth? Like, why isn't that a thing? Like, and I think it's because the industry is so focused on product and investments and things like that, I don't get it. Like it was kind of a rant that I was going on. I don't understand why that isn't more of a measurement that financial planners use to help clients, show progress. And it's like income is, our jam at YFP, planning is really, how can we help you, the client, grow and protect income, which is the lifeblood of the financial plan, and grow and protect net worth, which is what sticks, while keeping your goals in mind. And to me, like anything outside of that, like I don't get, like investments and insurance products. It's important, but it's part of that feeds into all that. So rant over.
That was a rant. And, normally I have three kids ranting in the back of my minivan. And today was Tim Baker ranting in the back of the car.
That.
So Tim Church, let's talk about Parkinson's law, because I think that's so much of this concept of lifestyle creep is Parkinson's law. So what is that, and how does that play into pharmacists and ultimately this concept here?
So this is a well-known principle, and it's been applied to many different areas. But initially, this was expressed as essentially the work will expand for the amount that you have available. In other words, however long you have to get a task or something done, that's how long it's going to take. And I think probably many pharmacists and students out there can relate to that based on when you have an exam or when you have an assignment or a project due, that sometimes people will procrastinate. And that's just human behavior to normally do that. But the reality is that concept and that principle has been applied to many other areas. It's been applied to, eating, and even whatever is on your plate or whatever you have in front of you, that's what you're going to eat.
Small plates versus big plates.
I think there was actually, there was a study in, I think it's the book Switch by Dan and Chip Heath. And they talked about, they were doing an experiment about people going to the movie theater, and they wanted to see what their behavior was based on how much popcorn they gave them. And what they found was they gave people old popcorn, fresh popcorn, and it didn't even matter. It mattered how much they actually put in the size of the bucket in terms of how much they had to eat. But I think that concept really is exactly what we're talking about here. Is that lifestyle creep is that tendency to spend whatever you make and even go above and beyond that. And I think that's where we see, a lot of famous people out there that they're even in really high amounts of debt despite making millions or even billions.
Expenses rise to the level of your income, right? So, and I think we see this in lottery winners too. It's a lot of people will say, "Oh, I wish I made, my worries would be over if I could make 25% more." But the science says is that you're going to spend 25% more. We see it even with like tax refunds. Some people spend that even before it comes in the door. So, I think and this is why, when we go through kind of the foundation of the financial plan, it's like, this is why budgeting is so important, because we have kind of limits, and we have a plan, we're not, it's not intentional. And I know this, we're talking about the podcast and coming up on episode 100. Parkinson's law was real for me to get the podcast edited early on. Like, if I knew that we had a Thursday deadline and I had, I was running around, with my hair on fire with clients and things like that, I would take all that time, sometimes more. If you go back, now we have Caitlin, who's awesome and keeps us on deadline.
Rockstar.
Yeah. But yeah, it's a real thing. It's absolutely a real thing.
And I think this really speaks to probably one of the most common things that we hear is I feel like I'm living paycheck to paycheck despite making a great income. And, I think that's getting pressed even further right now as we see some salary compression happening, the job market shifting a little bit. And so obviously lifestyle creep, I think, is more relevant than ever to pharmacists today and to pharmacy graduates today. And so we're hoping to capture, those that are getting ready to graduate here in the next month, those that are still even out transitioning, never too late, but try and do everything you can to lower those expenses and prevent that creep. So really two big reasons why lifestyle creep occurs: present bias and the comparison to others. So let's talk first about present bias. What is that concept and how does that relate to lifestyle creep?
So present bias is really the tendency to favor what is happening today versus what is happening tomorrow or several years down the road. There's a concept that's also been described as hyperbolic discounting, where we discount things that are going to happen in the future or that we anticipate that are going to happen. So it sort of makes sense that we want to enjoy ourselves today, whether that be with clothes, with purchases, with going out to eat, and that's the reality of kind of what's happening there.
So Tim Baker, from the financial planning perspective, the concept of present bias, how do you see this play into reality each and every day while you're working on a client with the financial plan? And what are some of the strategies that you use in helping them combat some of the aspects?
Yeah. It's so hard for us to really, empathize with or really even picture our 30-year older self. Right. So, it's hard for us to kind of, get into that mindset. So, one of the things when we talk about goals is really to lay out what's the path, what's the success timeline, we call it. So, Tim Church, you're my client. I say, hey, Tim Church, what I want you to do is let's get into my imaginary time machine. So we get into the DeLorean and we hit the dial there for April 2021. We get out of the DeLorean, you're 2 years older, you're 2 years wiser. What does success look like? And, we do that for 5 years. We do that for 10 years. And it's hard. And at first when I would do this practice, it's like pulling teeth almost. So it's just hard for us. And the further out we get, the more it's like that image of ourselves fades. I can envision myself at, let's see, I'm 36. I can envision myself at 38. Can I envision myself at 41? Maybe. At 46? No. So, but that's kind of the exercise that I started to do is I would start to put you in that age, so, I would say, you're 10 years older and 10 years wiser. And at 46, these are all the things that kind of come into my mind that I want to achieve. So I kind of backwards plan into that. And I try to transport you into that time and place, but it's hard. It's hard. And the further out it is, the more that we discount it. And I feel like, what I say is, again, we're trying to help grow and protect income, grow and protect net worth while keeping your goals in mind. And if we don't feel the push and pull between taking care of yourself today and your 30-year older self, we're probably doing something wrong. So it can't just be about pedal to the metal, spend today, and we'll just worry about it later on. But it also can't be stick your head down and achieve a $10 million net worth for a purpose without enjoying your boys grow up or or whatever that is. So it's threading that needle. And how do you do that?
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. So when you're walking through this exercise with your clients, obviously this is one of the biggest points that comes up with how you manage your money, right? Because these decisions, these micro decisions that are being made are having a compound effect over time. So when you're assessing client situations, how do you ensure that both of those things are happening simultaneously?
I think at the end of the day, it's just asking good questions and getting the out of the way. In reality, I joke around about that, but I think that's what it is, and really have the client or clients kind of, have a period of self-discovery. And sometimes it's not like a eureka moment. It's a process. It's a conversation. It's, hey, we kind of left it at this. Like, did you guys mull it around? Like, where are we at with it? What's the update? And I think having a forum, an open forum for partners or really kind of one-on-one to be able to talk through those issues becomes, it lays out a path for you. But it's not like it's the same thing as like, should I invest or should I pay down debt? It depends. It's kind of the same thing as like it's a process, and it's not going to be a binary, this is what you should do.
Right. And I think that's one of the key concepts, is that a lot of these things, in terms of whatever the financial position one is currently in at the moment, could be a culmination of habits that have manifested over time.
Compound effect.
So it's not just, the individual decisions that come up. I mean, somebody could be used to spending X amount on restaurants, on clothes and things like that, month after month after month, and that's just kind of the normal. And I'm sure that that's probably sometimes hard to discuss with clients, that you have to really take a hard look at that budget and what percentage of that is going towards your net worth.
Yeah, and I think this is a good time too to talk about, what can you do to be combating present bias, right? What can you be doing in your plan each and every month to actually, take some steps forward if this is something that you're struggling with. And I think for me, this comes to the concept of automation a little bit in your financial plan.
Get out of your own way.
Yeah, get out of your own way. And when I think about, there's just a natural human behavior that if you go out and spend money, name the thing you like to enjoy, it's a rush, right? I mean, I love buying books. I love shopping. I love doing lots of things. And that is things that you get positive feelings and reward. That is a natural human behavior. Me stashing away amount of money for 40 years into the future into my 401k, like dopamine surge is not happening, right? It's just not as exciting. I mean, there's maybe a few people that are listening.
But isn't that the one example though, where it's fairly automated for everyone, especially with auto enroll these days? Because that was what I was just thinking when you brought that up is, when you talked about automation, for most people, when they start at a job these days, and they have a 401k, their employer is going to automatically enroll them into a 401k. So you are completely on the sideline. You really don't have to do anything. You don't even have to pick the investment. You're probably going to be defaulted into a target fund. So the fact that you're kind of sitting on the sidelines, but then you wake up in 5 years and there's $100,000 there or whatever it is, like that's kind of what we're talking about. But to do it even more, more deeply in your financial plan with regard to like other types of savings.
Yeah.
But that's what it is. I mean, that's a perfect example of getting out of your own way. And it's so true with a lot of parts of the financial plan. It's just sometimes the more you tinker, the more that, you screw it up.
Yeah, and I think this is, we talked about this in episode 57. So for those that want to go back and listen to...
How do you remember these episodes?
I don't know. I spent a little bit of time memorizing them.
I don't.
Yeah, episode 57, automation, and we have a blog post on it as well. But for those of you that want to think about how to automate the plan and what that could look like, and we talk about sinking funds and buckets, but I think the essence of it is get out of your way. Set the plan, be intentional, and get out of the way.
Yeah, you have to protect yourself from yourself.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep.
So present bias, number one. The second thing is this concept of comparing to others. So not a new concept, comparing yourself with neighbors, keeping up the Joneses, you name it. Obviously, I think for pharmacists, that's a very real thing. So Tim Baker, talk to me about that. I mean, is that something you see with clients, this comparison to other pharmacists or peers and this need to keep up financially in whatever way?
Yeah, I think so. It might not be as overt of like, hey, my buddy just got this car, like I want one too, but I think it's always there. I mean, comparison is the enemy of content. So I think anytime that you're not doing you and you're worried about what everyone else is doing, like I sound like my dad, you're going to run into some problems because there's always going to be someone out there that's more athletic than you, taller than you, smarter than you. And I think if you get caught up in that, you're never going to be satisfied. And it's so true with money as well. And the problem is, in a world where we're so connected with social media, and we're running our highlights on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, it's a problem because we want to there's the fear of missing out, and you only live once, and all those concepts which you want to make sure that you're living an enriched life, but you want to make sure you're living your wealthy life, which sounds cliche, but maybe for some people, traveling the world is not a thing that they really aspire to. Or maybe someone that, maybe someone doesn't want to retire at age 50 or whatever it is, or buy a luxury car. But sometimes we get caught up in what everyone's doing, and we, our own values, our own beliefs start to bend. What is it, the saying is like you're the average of the five people that are closest to you, and they obviously are going to affect your exercise habits, your eating habits, your spending habits. And I think those are just things to be hyper aware of, because the reality is, again, to go back to it, the people that from a financial perspective that are typically the wealthiest and most content are socially indifferent to those things. And it's one of the things that, is a wealth building factor for Millionaire Next Door is they could, I'm going to say again, they could give a, what you're driving, where you're going, that type of thing. And they're doing, they're focused on their own financial plan and their own, vision of what a wealthy life is. And that's it.
And I think one of the biggest misconceptions is that, sometimes when we play that out and we have that comparison to others and what they're doing, is that we think to ourselves that if we are able to do some of these things that other people are doing, to buy these purchases, to go on these vacations, that's automatically going to increase happiness level. And I think that's the biggest misnomer that comes along with it. Now, of course, some of those things will, and it may be a temporary boost in happiness, but it may not be exactly what you were looking for.
Yeah, and I think the other thing too is, like, I see is, pharmacists or young couples will come to me, and they, I'll say, oftentimes when the pharmacist speaks with me, they share that they're overwhelmed with student debt or some other type of debt, and they're like, yeah, that's me, and they start to like tiptoe into like how much they actually owe, and I'm like, hit me with it. I've seen it all. Just tell me. And it might be like between the two of them, they might have $400,000 in debt. And when I say, I write, I'm taking notes and I write it down, and I think they're waiting for a reaction, and I'm not going to give it to them. But what I say to them after we kind of go through the conversation about the debt and how they feel about it is, I say in a way it's all relative, because I have some clients that come on and they have $800,000 in debt. I have some that come on that have zero and they actually have a positive net worth. And I think that goes into this, is like, if you're comparing yourself to others, not everyone is at, in the same, place financially, but we want to put ourselves there. And, I think it's just really, in my opinion, it's really sitting down and asking yourself, what truly is a wealthy life? Not what your parents think, not what your neighbor thinks. Like, what do you think is a wealthy life? And work towards that. Be intentional about that. It's something that we tell Olivia is like, why did you do this at school? And she's like, well, it's because everyone else was doing it. And I'm like, no, bro. Come on. Yeah. That's not a thing. So obviously, she's 4, we're working on it, but it's, it's a lifelong struggle, like I do the same thing. Absolutely. Like, we small business owner, like I want to, make sure the business is growing and have the things that, owning your business affords. But it's also like, when you go down that path, you're like, gotta stop, because it's not productive.
Well, and I think it can be so subtle, and I think the impact of it is happening. It can be subconscious, and like what you said, just a reminder of we tend to follow the behaviors and patterns of those that we're closest with, your inner circle, and really taking a step back to say, is that true for you, and are you aware of that and what's happening? So really evaluating the impact of your neighborhood, and evaluating the impact of your coworkers and your friends, and I think changing the point of comparison. I was talking with the students last week at Ohio State. And I think often in the pharmacy profession, it's very easy to play the pharmacist to pharmacist peer comparison game. And you see this so much with residency. Hey, I'm making 45 in residency, and my friend I sat next to for 3 years in therapeutics is making 120. Life sucks. So, I'm just going to keep riding my loans out, and I'll worry about it in 5 years, and kind of woes me. But I think if you take a step back, the median household income in the United States for a family of 4 is about $55,000 a year. So if you're a resident, single, making 45, and you change that point of perspective, how does that alter how you begin to think about your financial plan, each and every week? So finding people that can come around you to encourage you at that will be on that journey with you, to hold you accountable, to live the wealthy life, plan for the future, but also have fun today. And maybe that means a financial coach and a planner that can help you along in that journey as well. But I think that point of comparison, really is certainly real.
I think and I think that's where we hopefully think that YFP fits. We talk about empowering a community, like surround yourself with like-minded people. That's what we want this community to be, is that, kind of example of like, hey, there's other people like me that are struggling with, a question about their finances or just the direction in general. And I think that's healthy conversation. Absolutely. That's productive conversation. And I think being open, and really, I think one of the things you said is like, how do you combat this? Like, it's almost like challenge everything. Like when we talk about, when we talk with clients that have more or less a spending problem and there's credit card, it's like challenge every assumption. We live in a society that's like, I need this, I need that. And like, do you really need it? So challenge it from the bottom up. Obviously we need clothing and housing and food and all that kind of stuff. But, I think approaching it from like from a very basic level and then working from there is good. It's a good way to approach it.
And I think hearing you talk about community is a great reminder of why we exist, and what we're trying to do is to empower and build a community that is helping one another. And to be honest, without getting too sentimental, we're going to talk about this in episode 100, but that is what is most rewarding for us, is seeing that community thrive and help one another. So if you're not yet a part of the Your Financial Pharmacist Facebook group, please join us. We'd love to have you in the community, and we certainly think you have something to offer to our community, but we hope that group is there for you as well. Before we wrap up, just a reminder, if you like what you heard on this week's episode, or you've been following the podcast for some time, please head on over to iTunes or wherever you listen to your podcast each and every week and leave us a review. We'd love to get your feedback and a comment as well. And again, next week, we're going to come back and talk about financial moves that we think the pharmacy graduate should be making and things to be looking out for. And then we'll be following that up with episode 100. Have a great rest of your week.